The focus in this short week is on solving quadratics, and we have solved quadratic equations before by factoring only. And so in this several lessons coming up, we will talk about other ways where we can solve quadratic equations. So remember when we solved a polynomial, we were trying to find the zeros of the function. And the zeros of the function were the points where that quadratic would cross the x-axis. So if we were to graph it, and we did not learn how to graph in this course, but if you were to graph, you would find those 2 points. So I would find the point of -4, 0 and of 5, 0. And the zeros then would be -4 and 5. So zeros are anywhere where f of x is equal to 0. So we're saying what x value would we plug in to get 0 as the y value? So notice here, if I plug in -4 and I do all of the math, I end up with 0 and 0. So when I plug in -4, 0 comes out. When I plug in 5, 0 comes out. Previously, our only real method for solving was by factoring and then using the zero product property. So remember when we did that, we would first look at the 2, which is the a value. Remember, this is the a value and the b and the c. We would look at the a value, and if we could take a out of everything, we would do that first. We would take out a GCF. In this case, we can't do that. So we have 3 terms where a is greater than 1, so I would have to tic-tac-toe factor. So I'm looking for the 2x squared and the 1, and I multiply them to get 2x squared, and then I put that b value down here, -3x. Then I'm looking for numbers that would multiply to 2x squared, but would add to -3x. So I'm going to say -1x and -2x, because 2 negatives would multiply to a positive, but those would add to -3. Then these boxes would be any numbers that I had to multiply to get to -1x. And the sign will always go in that second column. So notice these are both negatives. I'm going to use a negative in both of these places. The only numbers that will work here is 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. So this must be the 2x, and this must be the 1x, or just x. Then our factorization was the diagonals. So we could say that this is equal to x minus 1, and 2x minus 1 is equal to 0. And the zero product property says if we have something that multiplies to 0, then one of the factors must be 0. So we say that this factor could be 0 if x were 1, and that this factor could be 0 if x were 1/2. So if I were to graph it, that's where that would cross the x-axis. Again, if they want us to write that as a set, we would write 1/2, 1 with the set brackets. So factoring is great, but not all quadratics are factorable. And the next couple of sections, we're going to look at some different ways. And the different ways are using the square root property. And we're only going to use this when b equals 0. So what that means is only if I have something like 4x squared minus 9 equals 0. Notice there's no x in the middle. There's no plus or minus anything x in the middle. That's because b is 0. So we could say that's like 4x squared plus 0x minus 9 equals 0. So we'll talk about how to solve that. We'll talk about completing the square. When b is an even number is the best way to use that. And then the quadratic formula, which always works, even when the solutions are imaginary, which we've touched on a little bit already in this course.